Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
Wind ripped across the carved stone steps like a living thing with teeth. Ethan Cole dragged Rania upward, one arm locked around her rib cage, her weight pulling against him with every step. Grit pelted their faces, sharp enough to draw blood. The world dropped away to their left, a 1,000-meter canyon mouth that swallowed sound and light, leaving only the sick pull of gravity and the promise of a fall that would last long enough to think about dying. Rania's hand clutched the sword resting across her thighs. The blade was matte black, absorbing light instead of reflecting it, and the metal felt wrong somehow. Too cold, too smooth, like touching the surface of deep water. Her voice cracked, raw, scared, furious. "Don't touch my sword. It takes its wielder's soul." Ethan didn't slow. His boots scraped stone, sending loose gravel skittering over the edge into nothing. "Good thing I'm touching you, not the sword. That blade binds you," she hissed, trying to twist away from him. "If you lift it, you must die for me. That's the law. That's how it works." A roar echoed from below. Engines climbing the canyon wall, their whine cutting through the wind like a bone saw through metal. Ethan looked at the sword, looked at her, her face streaked with blood and dust, her eyes wide with something between warning and terror, and wrapped his hand around the hilt. The metal bit into his palm, cold enough to ache. Rania went rigid against him. "No! Move!" he said. A crawler engine screamed right behind them, much closer than physics should allow, the sound splitting the air like a scream. They stumbled onto a slanted stone field that stretched upward like a tilted table. Gravel slid under their boots with every step, the surface unstable, treacherous. Ethan kept his grip on both Rania and the sword, his muscles burning from the climb. Rania grabbed his collar, panting, her fingers digging into the fabric. "You don't understand. Taking that blade means you accepted the death oath. You owe your life to me, and our laws make sure you pay it." Ethan kept walking, half dragging her across the loose stone. "Great news, I don't follow your laws." "You will," she snapped, stumbling against him, "because they'll kill us both if you break them." The blade chooses. The wielder obeys. There's no exception. There's never been an exception. He tightened his grip on the sword, feeling the weight of it settle into his palm like it had always belonged there. "Then we don't break. We run." "You can't run from this." A low rumble vibrated through the slope behind them, rock dislodged by incoming engines, the sound of something massive and mechanical grinding its way up from the canyon depths. Rania twisted to look back, her face going pale. "They're already here. They saw you take it. They know what it means." "What does it mean?" "It means you're mine now, and they'll make you prove it." The rumble grew louder, closer. Ethan could see shapes moving through the dust below. Crawler bikes with oversized tires designed for vertical climbs, their headlights cutting yellow cones through the haze. "How do I prove it?" "By dying for me when they demand it." A crawler crested the ridge ahead of them, its headlights locking onto Ethan like a rifle sight. They dove between towering slabs of rock, limestone formations that jutted from the plateau like broken teeth, creating a jagged natural maze. Shadows swallowed them whole, the temperature dropping 10 degrees in an instant. Rania leaned heavily against Ethan, her breathing ragged, one hand pressed to her side where dark blood seeped between her fingers. "You shouldn't carry that blade for me." "I'm not carrying the blade," he murmured, pulling her deeper into the maze. "I'm carrying you." She stopped short, forcing him to halt. Even in the darkness, he could see her eyes searching his face. "You don't know what it means." "Then tell me." Her breath trembled. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "The one who lifts it becomes bound. My life becomes yours to protect. Your life becomes my burden to answer for. Forever. Not a day, not a year. Forever. If you die protecting me, I die carrying the weight of your death. If I die while you live, you die broken by the failure. The blade doesn't release. It never releases." Ethan shifted his grip on the sword. The metal had warmed slightly against his palm, but it still felt alien, heavier than its physical weight suggested. "That's supposed to scare me?" "It should," she whispered. "Everyone else it scares. That's why no one touches another's blade. That's why the raiders are coming. Because you did what no outsider has ever done." Boots scraped stone somewhere in the maze. Voices, low, urgent, speaking in a dialect Ethan didn't recognize. A flashlight beam cut across the rocks 20 meters away, painting sharp shadows that danced and twisted. Ethan pulled Rania deeper into the narrow passage between two limestone slabs, the space so tight they had to turn sideways. Her blood left dark smears on the stone. Talk later, live now. There is no later, she said. Not for this. The moment you touched that sword, you stepped into our world, and our world doesn't let go. The flashlight beam stopped moving, then slowly turned toward their narrow passage. The raiders moved fast, their voices echoing through the stone maze, blocking exit after exit with practiced efficiency. Ethan counted at least 6 distinct voices, maybe more. They knew this terrain. They knew how to hunt. Ranya's voice broke. There's only one path left. I surrender. They'll spare you if I tell them you didn't know. No, you don't understand. The death oath isn't symbolic. It's tracked, enforced. There are families whose entire purpose is ensuring oath bearers fulfill their vows. They'll hunt you across the entire plateau until you die for me, or they kill you for refusing. That's not a threat. That's infrastructure. Ethan pulled her toward what looked like a dead end, a narrow corridor between two massive limestone plates that leaned against each other. I understand perfectly, he growled. I just don't care. Then you're insane. Probably. He jammed the blade between the two limestone plates where they met overhead. The metal bit into stone with a sound like breaking glass. What are you doing? Something stupid. He pulled with everything he had. Tendons stood out in his neck. His shoulders burned. The sword didn't budge for 3 seconds. Then the stone shrieked. A hairline crack appeared. Then another. The massive slab on the left began to shift, its base grinding against the rock beneath it. Ethan! Move when I say move! The slab tore loose with a sound like the world breaking. It slammed into the next formation, a pillar of limestone that had stood for 10,000 years. The pillar exploded. Dust erupted in a choking cloud. The chain reaction ripped through the maze, slabs falling, pillars collapsing, the entire structure of the stone labyrinth folding in on itself like a house of cards. A narrow opening appeared in the chaos, temporary, violent, suicidal, leading upward and away. Ethan grabbed Ranya's waist and yanked the sword free. Move, Ranya! They sprinted through the collapsing corridor, ducking falling stone, the world trying to crush them with every step. A boulder the size of a crawler smashed into the ground 3 meters behind them. Dust filled Ethan's lungs. He couldn't see, couldn't breathe, just ran. Ranya stumbled. He caught her, kept moving. Behind them, men screamed, some in anger, some in pain, some cut off mid-sound as tons of limestone found flesh and bone. The passage ahead narrowed to a crack barely wide enough for shoulders. We won't fit. Yes, we will. Ethan turned sideways and pushed Ranya through first, the stone scraping skin from her arms. He followed, his chest compressed, ribs aching. The sword held out ahead of him because there was no room to hold it any other way. The crack widened. They burst out onto open ground, and the plateau beneath their feet bulged upward. Something massive was rising from below, pushing the stone up from underneath like a fist punching through cloth. They sprinted across the tilting surface as cracks spiderwebbed outward from the rising bulge. Ethan could hear it now, the deep mechanical groan of hydraulics, the hiss of pressurized gas, the grinding of gears larger than he could imagine. What is that? Tunnel bore, Ranya gasped. They're coming from below. They're cutting us off from every side. The ground ahead leveled out onto a flat expanse of wind and dust, the upper plateau proper. No cover, no shelter, just open space and the endless howl of wind. Ranya's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees on the hard-packed dirt, one hand pressed to the wound in her side, the other reaching for the sword. You risk your life for a vow you don't understand. Ethan knelt beside her, still holding the blade. His hands were shaking, adrenaline crash mixing with exhaustion. I chose to hold that sword. That means I chose the vow. You don't choose the vow chooses you. And once it does, you're trapped, forever bound to someone else's survival. She looked up at him, her face a mask of dust and blood. That sword marked you. You can feel it, can't you? The weight, the cold. It's not just metal anymore. So let it. Tears cut lines through the dust on her face. The first vulnerability he'd seen that wasn't born from physical pain. "You don't know what you gave me." He lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I know exactly what I gave, and I'm not taking it back." The sound of engines rose from 3 directions at once. Crawler bikes crested the edges of the plateau, their headlights painting the flat expanse in harsh white light. They formed a semicircle, boxing them in, their riders dismounting in practice formation. 7 men, all armed, all moving with the confidence of people who had done this before. Rania whispered, her voice hollow. "They will demand your death. That is the price for an outsider touching another's blade. They'll make me watch. They'll make it slow. That's the law when the vow is broken by ignorance." One of the raiders, older, with a face carved by win and violence, stepped forward. He carried a blade longer than Ethan's forearm, the edge notched from use. "So the outsider touched the girl's blade," the man said, his voice like gravel in a can. "Did she tell you what that means, stranger?" "She told me. And you did it anyway?" "I did it anyway." The raider leader laughed, a short barking sound without humor. "Stupid or suicidal? Doesn't matter which. The law's the law. You owe her your life now. And since you took the vow in ignorance, we're here to collect payment." Ethan turned the sword in his hand, studying the blade in the harsh light. Then he offered it to Rania, hilt first. "Then take my soul properly." Her hand hovered over the hilt, shaking, hesitating before her fingers slowly wrapped around his. The raider leader raised his blade. "A pretty gesture. Won't save you." The raider stepped closer, his blade catching the light from the crawler bikes. The other 6 formed a loose circle, cutting off any escape. The wind howled across the plateau, carrying dust that stung exposed skin. Ethan rose to his feet, still holding the sword with Rania's hand atop his. The weight felt different now, not lighter but more balanced, like something shifting into place. "So he bears the blade," the raider leader growled. "He owes his soul." "The law is clear." Ethan stepped forward, putting himself between Rania and the approaching man. "No, I'm giving it freely." The raider stopped. His eyes narrowed. "What?" "I said I'm giving it freely. Not because the blade chose me. Not because some law demands it. I chose to pick up that sword. I chose what comes with it." Behind him, Rania made a sound, half gasp, half sob. He could feel her hand tightening over his on the sword's hilt. The raider leader stared at him, confusion breaking through the hard mask of authority. You don't understand how this works. The blade binds you. The law enforces the binding. There is no choice. There's never been choice." "Wrong," Ethan said. "I had a choice the moment I wrapped my hand around this thing. I knew what she told me. I did it anyway. That's not fate. That's not law. That's decision." The other raiders exchanged glances. One of them spoke, a younger man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. "He can't do that. The vow doesn't work if it's chosen. It has to be compelled. That's the entire structure. That's what makes it binding." "Then your structure just broke," Ethan said. The wind picked up, howling between them, carrying the smell of dust and distant rain. Rania stood using the sword, still held by both of them, for balance. Her voice was stronger now, cutting through the wind. "He's telling the truth. I warned him. I told him exactly what the blade meant, and he took it anyway, not from ignorance, from choice." The raider leader's jaw worked. His blade lowered slightly, uncertainty creeping into his posture. That's not how it's done. The vow requires compulsion. The blade must choose against the wielder's will. Otherwise, there's no weight to it, no enforcement mechanism. You can't just volunteer. "Watch me," Ethan said. He tightened his grip on the blade, feeling Rania's hand move with his. "She warned me this sword takes its wielder's soul. She was right about the binding. Wrong about the taking." He met the raider leader's eyes. "It doesn't take it. I gave it." The words landed like a physical blow. The raiders stepped back. Not much, just half a meter, but enough. The leader's blade wavered, uncertainty spreading across his face like a crack through glass. "You gave it," the man repeated slowly, testing the words. "You can't give what must be taken. There's no precedent. No law covers this." "Then make a new law," Rania said. She stepped forward, still gripping the sword with Ethan. or admit your laws don't account for someone choosing the burden. Your entire system is built on compulsion and enforcement. What happens when someone wants the vow? The young raider with the scar spoke again, his voice uncertain. The council will have to rule on this. We can't execute for a vow that was chosen. The entire point is punishing those who take the burden unwillingly and fail. But if he took it willingly, he trailed off, looking to his leader for guidance. The raider leader's face worked through competing emotions, anger, confusion, something that might have been grudging respect. Finally, he lowered his blade completely. The council will rule, he said, his voice flat. Until then, the vow stands. You carry her blade, you bear her life, and if you fail, stranger, we'll be there to collect. Willingly given or not, a soul debt is a soul debt. He turned to his men. Mount up. We're done here. The raiders moved back to their crawler bikes, their movements less certain than before. The engines roared to life, harsh and mechanical in the thin air. The leader paused before mounting, looking back at Ethan and Rania. What's your name, stranger? Ethan Cole. Ethan Cole. The raider tested the name, nodding slowly. The council will want to speak with you. You've done something that's never been done. That makes you either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Ethan said. The raider almost smiled, a brief twitch at the corner of his mouth that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Stay alive until the council calls. Would be a shame to waste an interesting story. The crawlers pulled away, their engines fading into the distance, leaving Ethan and Rania alone on the plateau under a sky turning purple with approaching dusk. Rania's hand slipped from the sword. She swayed and Ethan caught her before she fell. Easy, you're still bleeding. I know, she said, her voice weak. I've known. Just kept going. He lowered her to the ground, leaning her back against a boulder that jutted from the plateau's surface. Her face was gray under the dust, her lips nearly white. Show me the wound. She lifted her hand from her side. Blood welled up. Too much blood, too dark. The fabric of her shirt was soaked through. When did this happen? When we were climbing the steps. Ricocheted bullet. Didn't want to slow you down. Ethan swore. He stripped off his jacket and shirt, tearing the shirt into strips. The wind bit into his bare skin, but he ignored it. This is going to hurt. Everything hurts. He pressed the wadded fabric against the wound. Rania hissed through her teeth but didn't pull away. He tied the makeshift bandage tight, knotting it at her hip. That won't hold forever, she said. It'll hold until we get somewhere with actual medical supplies. There's a settlement. 3 hours walk northwest, if we can make it before full dark. Ethan looked at the sky. The sun was already touching the horizon, painting the plateau in shades of rust and amber. 3 hours. Can you walk? Can you carry me if I can't? Yes. She smiled, small, pained, but genuine. Then we'll make it. He helped her to her feet, keeping one arm around her waist. The sword he tucked into his belt, awkward, unbalanced, but better than carrying it the whole way. They started walking northwest, following the slope of the plateau as it gradually descended toward the distant line of what might have been buildings or might have been rock formations. The wind pushed against them, making every step a fight. Ethan? Yeah? Why did you really take the sword? He was quiet for a long moment, their boots crunching on loose gravel, the wind howling around them. Because you needed help, and I could give it. That's it? That's the whole reason? That's the whole reason. Most people need a better reason to tie their soul to a stranger. Maybe I'm not most people. She laughed, a weak, breathless sound. No, you're really not. They walked in silence for several minutes. The sun dropped lower, the shadows stretching long across the plateau. Ethan's arms ached from supporting Rania's weight. His chest burned from the thin air. But he kept moving. The council will really want to talk to you, Rania said eventually. What you did, it challenges everything. Sounds like their problem. It's our problem. If they can't break you, everything changes. Then everything changes. She was quiet after that. They walked on, the plateau gradually leveling out, the distant buildings resolving into actual structures. Low, angular, built from the same limestone as the canyon walls. Smoke rose from several chimneys, dark against the purple sky. We're close, Rania said. Another kilometer, maybe less. Think they'll help us? If I ask them to, my family has standing, influence. They'll give us shelter, supplies, medical treatment. And then, and then we face the council. And you explain how you managed to do something that isn't supposed to be possible. Looking forward to it. She laughed again, stronger this time. Liar. The settlement was larger than it looked from a distance. Maybe 300 buildings clustered around a central square. The structures were all limestone and iron, built low to resist the wind, their roofs weighted with stones. Lights flickered in windows, oil lamps, not electric, casting warm orange glows into the gathering darkness. People emerged as they entered the settlement's outskirts. Men and women in rough-spun clothing, their faces weathered by wind and sun, their eyes cautious but not hostile. They stared at Ethan, at his bare chest, at the sword in his belt, at the way he supported Rania. An older woman approached, her gray hair tied back in a severe bun. Her eyes widened when she saw Rania. Lady Rania, you're hurt. I'm alive, Mara. Thanks to him. She gestured weakly at Ethan. He needs shelter, medical supplies, food. Mara's gaze shifted to Ethan, her expression unreadable. He bears your blade. He does. By choice? By choice. A murmur rippled through the gathered crowd. Mara's eyes narrowed. That's not possible. It happened anyway, Rania said. Her voice was fading, exhaustion and blood loss catching up. We can debate possibilities later. Right now I need a healer and he needs food. Can you manage that, Mara? The older woman studied them both for a long moment, then nodded. Bring them to my house, someone fetched Torin. Tell him we have a wounded woman and a mystery man. Move. The crowd parted. Mara led them through narrow streets between low buildings, her pace quick despite her age. People watched from doorways and windows, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Mara's house was larger than most, 2 stories of limestone with a slate roof. She pushed open the door and gestured them inside. Upstairs, first room on the left. Get her on the bed. I'll bring water and cloth. Ethan carried Rania up a narrow staircase, his legs shaking from exhaustion. The room was simple, a bed, a chair, a small table with an oil lamp. He laid her down carefully, then collapsed into the chair. Rania's eyes were half closed. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. We're alive. That's more than I expected an hour ago. Mara appeared with a basin of water and clean cloth. Behind her came a thin man with clever eyes and medical supplies in a worn leather bag. This is Torin, Mara said. Best healer in the settlement. He'll see to her wound. Torin set his bag on the table and leaned over Rania, his hands quick and efficient as he removed Ethan's makeshift bandage. Bullet wound. Clean entrance, no exit. The bullet's still inside. He looked up at Ethan. You stopped the bleeding. Good work. Another hour and she would have died. Can you save her? I can try. The bullet needs to come out. That means cutting. And pain. A lot of pain. He turned to Rania. I have some herbs that will dull it, but not much. You're going to feel most of this. Do it, Rania said. From somewhere below, a deep rhythmic sound began. Drums, low and resonant, carrying through the stone walls. The beat was slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat slowing toward death. Ethan looked at Mara. What's that? The calling drums, she said quietly. The council is gathering. They know you're here. Torin nodded and began preparing his instruments. Small knives, forceps, needles, thread. Mara brought more water and cloth, then quietly left the room. Ethan stood to follow her, but Rania's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Stay. You don't need me for this. Yes, I do. The blade binds you. You're supposed to share the burden. So share it. He looked at Torin. The healer shrugged. Your choice. But if you stay out of my way. The drums continued their slow beat, echoing through the settlement like a countdown. Ethan pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat. Rania's hand found his and gripped it tight. Torin worked quickly, his movements precise and practiced. He made the first cut and Rania's back arched, her hand crushing Ethan's fingers. She didn't scream, just breathed hard through her teeth, her face contorted in pain. Almost there, Torin murmured. I can see it, just a bit deeper. The forceps clicked against metal. Rania's grip tightened until Ethan thought his bones might break. Got it. Torin lifted the bullet, a small, deformed piece of metal that had nearly ended her life. He dropped it into a bowl with a wet clink, then began stitching the wound closed. The drums outside fell silent. The sudden absence of sound was worse than the beating itself. Ranya's breathing gradually slowed. Her grip loosened. By the time Torin finished bandaging her side, her eyes were closed. "She'll sleep now," Torin said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "The body's response to trauma. Let her rest. When she wakes, give her water. Small sips at first." "How long until she's recovered?" "Days, maybe a week. The wound was serious. She lost a lot of blood." Torin studied Ethan with those clever eyes. "You really took her blade by choice?" "I really did." "Why?" "She needed help. So do a lot of people. Most don't get their souls bound to a stranger." Ethan didn't answer. Torin gathered his instruments back into his bag. "The council will send for you. Soon, probably. They don't like unknowns. And you, stranger, are the biggest unknown this settlement has seen in years." "Looking forward to it." Torin smiled, a quick, thin expression. "No, you're not. But you'll face them anyway. That's what soulbound do. They face things, no matter the cost." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Ethan sat in the chair, watching Rania sleep. Her breathing was steady, her face peaceful despite the bandages. The oil lamp cast dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, voices drifted up from the street. Low, urgent conversations. He caught fragments. "The outsider who chose the bond. The council will break him, or he'll break everything." Mara returned with food, bread, dried meat, something that might have been cheese. She set the plate on the table. "Eat. You look half dead yourself." Ethan ate mechanically, barely tasting the food. Mara stood by the window looking out at the dark settlement. The voices outside continued their anxious murmur. "They're scared," Mara said without turning. "Of what you represent." "What do I represent?" She turned to face him, her expression hard and unreadable. "You're dangerous, not violent, but dangerous in the way new ideas are. You've introduced something we've spent generations suppressing, that someone might choose the burden." She moved closer, her voice dropping. "The council will try to break you. They'll push and test until they find your limit. And when they do, they'll use it to prove choice is weak, that compulsion is necessary. And if they can't break me, then everything changes. Every law, every structure, everything we built on the lie that no one would choose." She held his gaze. "If they fail to break you, we're all in trouble." She left, closing the door behind her. Ethan sat in the silence, watching Rania sleep, the weight of the sword at his belt a constant reminder of what he'd chosen. The oil lamp burned low, shadows deepening in the corners of the room. Outside, the anxious voices continued, and the wind howled across the plateau, carrying dust and the promise of harder days to come. Rania woke near dawn, her eyes fluttering open as gray light filtered through the window. She looked around the room, confused at first, then remembering. "How long was I out?" 7 hours, maybe 8. Ethan offered her water. She drank slowly, wincing as the movement pulled at her stitches. "The raiders." "Gone. We're in a settlement. Mara's house. A healer named Torin removed the bullet." She probed at the bandage on her side carefully. "He's good. I can barely feel it. That's the herbs. He said you'll feel it plenty when they wear off." "Looking forward to that." She sat up slowly, her face pale but determined. "Help me stand. I need to see if I can walk." "Torin said you should rest." "Torin isn't facing the council. I am. And I need to be able to stand when they question us." A deep gong sounded from somewhere in the settlement. Single, resonant, final. Ranya's face went pale. "That's the summons. The council is assembled." Ethan helped her to her feet. She swayed, gripping his arm for support, but stayed upright. "Not bad. Where's my blade?" He pointed to where he'd leaned it against the wall. "Safe." "Good. They'll want to see it. Want to examine it to verify the bond." She took a few experimental steps, each one slow and deliberate. "The bond feels different now. Can you feel it?" "Feel what?" "The connection. It's like a thread, thin but unbreakable. I can sense where you are even without looking." Ethan thought about it. Now that she mentioned it, there was something, a faint awareness at the back of his mind. a presence that hadn't been there before. I feel it. It'll get stronger with time. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mara entered without waiting for permission. The council sent a messenger. They want to see you both. Today, within the hour. Rania straightened, pain flickering across her face. We'll be ready. Can you walk? I'll manage. Mara's expression softened slightly. There's clean clothes in the chest, and breakfast downstairs. You should eat. You'll need your strength for what's coming. She left. Rania moved to the chest and pulled out a simple tunic and pants, rough spun but clean. She started to dress, then stopped, looking at Ethan. Turn around. We're soul-bound. Don't we share everything? We share burdens and survival, not my naked body. Turn around. He turned, facing the wall. He heard her moving, the soft sounds of fabric and her occasional sharp intake of breath when the movement pulled her stitches. Okay, you can turn back. She was dressed, her hair pulled back from her face. She looked stronger, more composed, more like the woman who'd warned him not to touch her blade. Let's eat, then face the council. What should I expect? Questions, tests, challenges. They'll want to know everything about you, about why you chose the bond, about whether you really understand what you've done. And if I can't convince them, then they'll break the bond, forcibly. It's never been done before, but they'll try. They have to. You're too dangerous to leave bound if they think you're lying or manipulated or insane. And breaking the bond means death, usually. The shock of severing a soul bond is supposed to kill both parties. But there are old texts that suggest it might be possible to survive. If the bond is new enough, if the binding isn't deep. She met his eyes. You've been bound for less than a day. You might survive, probably, maybe. Reassuring. I'm not here to reassure you. I'm here to prepare you. They ate breakfast in Mara's small kitchen. Porridge with dried fruit, more of the bread from last night, hot tea that tasted like bark and stone. Mara watched them in silence, her face unreadable. When they finished, she stood. The council chamber is in the central square. Everyone will be watching. Everyone will be listening. Don't lie. They can sense deception and don't show weakness. They respect strength, even when they fear it. Thanks for the help, Ethan said. Mara's expression softened a fraction. Thank me by surviving. If you die breaking the bond, Rania dies with you. And I've known her since she was born. She looked at Rania. Your mother would want you to live, no matter what it costs. Rania's face went very still. My mother is dead. Yes, but her wishes aren't. They left the house, stepping into cool morning air. The settlement was already awake. People moving through the streets, working, talking, living. But they stopped when they saw Ethan and Rania. Stopped and stared. They all know, Rania murmured. Word spreads fast here. What are they thinking? Some think you're brave. Some think you're insane. Most think you're both. They walked through the narrow streets toward the central square. The buildings gave way to an open space paved with limestone slabs. In the center stood a large structure, 2 stories tall, built from darker stone than the rest of the settlement. Windows like narrow eyes, a heavy wooden door, the council chamber. A crowd had gathered, maybe 100 people, all watching in silence as Ethan and Rania approached. The door opened. A woman emerged, tall, severe, her gray hair cropped short. She wore dark robes that marked her as someone with authority. Rania of the Western families. Ethan Cole, outsider. The council summons you. Enter and be judged. The chamber was dim, lit by oil lamps set in iron sconces along the walls. The air smelled of old stone and burning oil. At the far end, 5 figures sat behind a long table carved from single piece of limestone. The council. 3 women, 2 men, all old enough to have seen decades of life on this harsh plateau. Their faces were carved by wind and time into masks of authority. The woman in the center spoke, her voice like ice cracking. Approach! Ethan and Rania walked forward, their footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Ethan could feel the weight of attention from the gathered crowd behind them. The entire chamber was full. People pressed shoulder to shoulder to witness this. When they reached the table, Rania bowed slightly. Ethan didn't. The woman's eyes narrowed. You do not bow to the council, outsider? I bow to people who've earned it. A murmur rippled through the crowd. One of the male council members leaned forward, his face darkening. You stand in judgment before the highest authority of the plateau. You will show respect. I'll show respect when I understand what I'm being judged for. Ranya's hand found his arm, a warning touch. He ignored it. The woman in the center studied him for a long moment, then gestured dismissively. Let him stand as he wishes. His manners, or lack thereof, are not why we summoned him. She turned her attention to Ranya. You allowed an outsider to touch your blade. I warned him not to, yet he touched it anyway. Why did you not stop him? I was injured, barely conscious. He was carrying me. The raiders were closing in. There was no time to stop him. There is always time to protect one's blade. Not when you're dying. The woman's expression didn't change. You should have died rather than allow contamination of the sacred bond. Ranya's face went hard. That's easy to say from behind a table. Harder to do when you're bleeding out on a canyon wall. Irrelevant. The law is clear. No outsider may touch another's blade. The penalty for allowing it is death. Ethan stepped forward. She didn't allow it. I took it. If you want to punish someone, punish me. The councilwoman's gaze shifted to him, cold and measuring. You admit to taking the blade? I admit to making a choice. There is no choice in soul bonds. They are compelled, enforced, binding through law and tradition, not through individual decision. Then your law doesn't account for what happened. Our law accounts for everything. It doesn't account for me. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the crowd behind them seemed to hold its breath. The councilwoman leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. You believe you are a special outsider? That you have done something unique? I believe I made a choice your culture says is impossible. That makes me either crazy or right. You're here to figure out which. One of the other councilwomen spoke, younger with sharp eyes. Let us test the bond. If it is true, if you truly chose, then the blade will reflect it. Bring forth the sword. Ranya moved to retrieve her blade, but Ethan was faster. He pulled it from his belt and placed it on the table before the council. The blade seemed darker in the lamplight, its surface absorbing rather than reflecting the glow. The sharp-eyed woman stood and approached the blade. She didn't touch it, just studied it, her gaze intense. The binding mark is present, fresh, less than a day old. She looked up at the council leader. The bond is real. But is it chosen or compelled? That is the question. The woman turned to Ethan. Tell us exactly what happened when you took the blade. Every detail, every thought. Do not lie, we will know. Ethan described the canyon stairs, the raiders closing in, Ranya's warning, his decision to grab the sword anyway. He spoke plainly, without embellishment, without trying to make himself sound heroic or justified. When he finished, the council sat in silence. Finally, the leader spoke. You were warned, you understood the consequence, yet you took the blade regardless. Yes. Why? Because she needed help and I could give it. That is not sufficient reason to bind your soul. It was sufficient for me. You are either lying or insane. I'm neither. Then you are naive. You do not understand the weight of what you have done. The soul bond is not a temporary alliance. It is permanent, unbreakable. It will define every moment of your existence until death. You will never be free of her. She will never be free of you. That burden destroys men. It has destroyed thousands over the centuries. And you chose it for a stranger you met on a canyon wall? Ethan met her eyes. Yes. The council leader stood, her robes rustling. Then we will test the strength of your choice. If it is true, if you truly understand and accept the bond, then you will survive the trial. If not, the bond will break and you will die. Either way, we will have our answer. What trial? The severance, an ancient rite used to break false bonds. If the bond is compelled, forced through manipulation or coercion, the severance will reveal it. The false bond will shatter, and both parties will survive, freed from each other. She moved around the table, approaching Ethan. But if the bond is true, if it is chosen and accepted, then the severance will be agony. The bond will resist. And if you cannot endure the pain, it will kill you both. Ranya stepped forward, her face pale. The severance hasn't been performed in a century. No one knows if it still works. You could kill us both for no reason. If the bond is true, it cannot be broken. You will survive. And if you're wrong, then we will know the truth of soul bonds. that they cannot be chosen, that our laws are correct. That compulsion is necessary. The council leader smiled, cold and certain. Either way, we learn. Either way, the law's preserved. She gestured to two guards standing by the chamber door. Take them to the severance chamber. We perform the rite at sunset. The guards moved forward. Ethan's hand went to the sword on the table, but Rania caught his arm. Don't. Fighting won't help. They're going to torture us. They're going to test us. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. The guards reached them. Two large men with hands scarred from hard labor. They didn't draw weapons, didn't need to. Come quietly, one of them said, or be dragged. Your choice. Ethan looked at Rania. She nodded slightly. They went quietly. The severance chamber was underground, accessed through a narrow staircase that spiraled down into darkness. The walls were carved limestone, the steps worn smooth by centuries of feet. At the bottom, a round room, empty except for a circular pattern carved into the floor. Geometric, precise, meaningless to Ethan's eyes. The guards positioned them in the center of the pattern, then retreated to the stairs. Sunset, one of them said. The council will come. Don't try to leave. There's nowhere to go. They left, their footsteps fading up the stairs. Ethan and Rania stood in the darkness, the only light coming from the stairwell above. How much time do we have? Rania thought about it. 6 hours, maybe 7. They sat down on the cold stone floor, their backs against the wall. Tell me about the severance, Ethan said. Everything you know. Not much. It's old, predating current council structure. Used to break bonds that were formed through manipulation or coercion. How does it work? No one alive knows the full procedure, but the old texts describe it as invasive. They cut the bond by force, use ritual and pain to sever the connection between souls. And if the bond is real, then it resists, fights back. The texts say it feels like being torn in half while still alive. Can we survive it? The texts aren't clear. Some suggest yes. Some suggest no. All agree it's agony. Silence fell between them. Minutes stretched into an hour. Finally, Rania spoke, her voice quiet. I'm sorry for warning you, for telling you about the blade. If I just kept quiet, you might have grabbed it without knowing. Then the bond would be clearly compelled. We'd survive the severance. Or I wouldn't have grabbed it at all. Would that have been worse? Yes, because you'd be dead. She turned to look at him in the darkness. You really mean that? I really do. Even now? Even knowing what's coming? Even now? She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. You're insane. Probably. Time passed. The dim light from above gradually shifted as the sun moved across the sky. Ethan? Yeah? If we don't break, if the bond holds, I need you to know something. What? You matter. To me, not because of the bond or the vow or any of it. You matter because you chose me when you didn't have to. Because you're sitting here preparing to die rather than run. Her voice cracked slightly. You matter. He pulled her closer. Same. She kissed him, soft, brief, tasting of salt and fear, and something that might have been hope. When she pulled back, she was smiling. If we survive, I'm keeping you. I was counting on it. They sat together in the darkness, waiting for sunset and whatever came with it. The council arrived exactly as the last light faded from the world above. 5 figures descended the spiral stairs, their robes rustling, oil lamps casting dancing shadows on the walls. They moved in formation, practiced and precise. The council leader stood at the edge of the circular pattern carved into the floor. Ethan Cole, Rania of the Western families, you will stand in the center of the pattern and remain there for the duration of the severance. They stood. Ethan could feel his heart hammering. Beside him, Rania's hand found his and gripped tight. The 5 council members positioned themselves around the circle's perimeter, evenly spaced. Each held a small blade, ceremonial, ornate, nothing like the utilitarian weapons Ethan had seen the raiders carry. The council leader began to speak, words in a language Ethan didn't recognize. Old, formal. Each syllable deliberate and weighted. The other council members joined in, their voices creating a rhythmic chant that echoed off the chamber walls. Ethan felt something shift. The air grew heavy, pressing down on his chest. The carved pattern beneath their feet began to glow, Faint at first, then brighter, pulsing in time with the chant. "It's starting," Rania whispered. The glow intensified. Ethan felt it now, a pulling sensation in his chest like hooks embedded under his ribs, tugging at something deep inside. The bond. They were trying to tear it loose. The pain came slowly at first, a dull ache spreading from his chest outward. Then sharper, deeper, like something vital was being carved away piece by piece. Rania gasped beside him. Her grip on his hand became crushing. The chanting grew louder, faster. The pulling sensation intensified, becoming a wrenching force that made Ethan's knees buckle. He stayed standing, had to stay standing. The pain increased, no longer just physical, but something worse, emotional, spiritual. Like every moment of loneliness and abandonment he'd ever felt was being dragged to the surface and magnified 1,000 times. This was what breaking the bond felt like. This was severance. Rania screamed, a raw, broken sound. Her legs gave out, but Ethan caught her, holding her upright, his own vision going dark at the edges. The council chanted louder. The pattern beneath them blazed like captured lightning. The bond fought back. Ethan could feel it now. Not just the pain, but the resistance. The connection between them wasn't breaking. It was pulling tighter, weaving deeper, embedding itself in places the severance couldn't reach. Because he'd chosen it. Because Rania had accepted his choice. Because the bond wasn't just magical ritual or cultural law, it was decision made manifest. The pain reached a crescendo. Ethan's vision went white, his hearing reduced to a high-pitched whine. Every nerve in his body screamed. But he didn't let go of Rania, didn't let the bond break, didn't let the choice unmake itself. The chanting stopped. The glow faded. The pain receded, slowly, like tide withdrawing from shore. Ethan collapsed to his knees, dragging Rania down with him. They knelt in the center of the pattern, both shaking, both gasping for air. The council leader stepped into the circle. She placed her hand on Ethan's chest. He flinched at the touch. She withdrew her hand and turned to the other council members. "The bond holds. It did not break. It did not even weaken." Her voice carried through the chamber, every word clear. "The severance failed." One of the male council members moved forward, his face skeptical. "That's impossible. The severance breaks all compelled bonds. If it failed, then the bond was not compelled," the council leader finished. She looked down at Ethan and Rania with an expression that might have been awe or might have been fear. He chose. She accepted. And the bond itself recognized the choice as true. But it means everything we believed about soul bonds was incomplete. We thought compulsion was necessary because we thought no one would choose the burden. We were wrong. She knelt before them, an act that sent murmurs through the other council members. "Forgive me," she said simply. "We sought to break what could not be broken, to disprove what was true. I am glad we failed." Ethan found his voice raw and weak. "So we survive? You survive, the bond holds. You are both free to leave, free to live, free to prove that choice is stronger than compulsion." She stood and addressed the other council members. "Spread the word. The severance failed. The bond was chosen and it held. Let all the plateau know soul bonds need not be chains. They can be choices." The council filed out, leaving Ethan and Rania alone in the chamber. They stayed kneeling for a long time, too exhausted to move, too shaken to speak. Finally, Rania whispered, "You saved us by not letting go." "We saved us. Together." She smiled, weak but genuine. "Forever then. Forever." They climbed the spiral stairs together, moving slowly, supporting each other. At the top, they emerged into cool night air in a crowd of hundreds. The entire settlement had gathered. Word of the severance had spread. They'd been waiting. When they saw Ethan and Rania emerge, alive, together, still bound, the crowd erupted. Not in cheers exactly, something more complex. A mix of awe and fear and hope and uncertainty. Mara pushed through the crowd and pulled Rania into a careful embrace. "You survived, both of you." "The bond held," Rania said. "So it's true? It can be chosen." "It can?" Mara looked at Ethan, her severe expression softening. "You've changed everything, outsider. Whether that's good or bad, Time will tell. I didn't mean to change anything, just meant to help. That's how all the great changes start. Someone just trying to help. The crowd parted as they walked through, people reaching out to touch Ethan's shoulder, Ranya's hand, wanting contact with something they'd been told was impossible. They made their way back to Mara's house. Inside, she prepared food and hot tea while they collapsed into chairs around her small table. "What happens now?" Ethan asked. Mara set the tea before them. "Now you rest, heal, let the bond settle." She left them alone. They drank the tea in silence, warmth spreading through exhausted bodies. Rania reached across the table and took Ethan's hand. "I choose this," she said. "In case it wasn't clear before, I choose the bond. I choose you. Every day. Forever. Same. Even when it hurts? Especially when it hurts." She laughed, tired but real. "We're going to be insufferable. Could be worse. How? We could have chosen it alone." She squeezed his hand. "Never alone. That's what the bond means." They sat together as the night deepened. The settlement quiet around them, the weight of what they'd survived settling into something that felt almost like peace. Morning came too early, light streaming through the window and pulling them from sleep. Ethan woke first. Rania was curled against him on the narrow bed upstairs. At some point during the night they'd moved there, too exhausted to care about propriety. He could feel the bond now in the quiet morning, a steady presence at the back of his mind. Not intrusive, just there, like knowing his own heartbeat. Rania stirred, her eyes opening. "You're still here. Where else would I be? I don't know. Part of me thought last night was a dream. It happened. We survived. We did." They dressed and went downstairs. Mara had already prepared breakfast. "You have visitors," Mara said as they ate. "Young people, from other families. They want to know about the choice, about the bond." Word spread fast. After breakfast, the visitors came. 5 young people, 3 women, 2 men, all roughly Ranya's age. They sat in Mara's small living room, their eyes wide and eager and scared. The youngest woman leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Is it true? The bond held? You chose it and it didn't break?" "It's true," Ethan said. A young man with work-scarred hands spoke next, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then everything they told us is wrong. If choice is real, compulsion is a lie." The room went silent. Rania met each of their eyes in turn. "Not a lie, but incomplete. Compulsion works. We've built an entire culture on it, but it's not the only way, maybe not even the best way." "Will the council allow it?" another woman asked. "Will they let others choose?" "They'll have to," Ethan said. "We proved it's possible. They can't unprove that." The young people absorbed this, their faces caught between hope and fear. "What do we do now?" the youngest woman asked. Rania thought about it. "Live. Make your own choices. Show others it's possible, and don't let fear stop you from trying." They talked for another hour, questions and stories and tentative hopes, before the visitors finally left. Mara returned from the kitchen. "That was good. You gave them something to believe in." "Is belief enough?" Ethan asked. "It's a start." The days that followed fell into a pattern. Ethan and Rania healed. The bond deepened. More visitors came, some curious, some desperate, all wanting to see the impossible made real. A week after the severance, the council summoned them again. This time the atmosphere was different. Not hostile, almost respectful. The council leader spoke without preamble. "We have deliberated. We have consulted the old texts. We have decided to change the law." She paused, letting the weight of it settle. "From this day forward, soul bonds may be chosen." Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. Excited, frightened, angry. The council leader raised her hand for silence. "Compelled bonds will still exist for those who refuse, but we will no longer enforce them for those who offer freely." She looked directly at Ethan and Rania. "You have shown us what we thought impossible. For that, the plateau is in your debt." Ethan stood. "We don't want debt. We just want to live." "Then live. Show others what choice looks like." They left the council chamber to find the settlement celebrating, quietly, thoughtfully, but with unmistakable joy. People talking, imagining, hoping. "We really did change everything," Rania murmured. Is that good? Ask me in 10 years. Will we still be together in 10 years? She looked at him, the bond thrumming between them, strong and sure. We'll be together forever. That's what forever means. Works for me. They walked through the settlement, the sun setting over the plateau, painting the limestone buildings in shades of gold and amber. Behind them, people were making choices, accepting burdens, binding themselves not through force, but through will. And ahead of them, decades of living with that choice, of proving every day that the bond was real, that choosing to carry someone else's burden was not weakness, but strength. Ethan tightened his grip on Ranya's hand. She smiled. Don't let go. Never. They walked on together into the gathering dusk, the wind howling across the plateau, carrying the promise of tomorrow, forever bound, forever choosing, forever free. He refused to let the sword take his soul, so he gave it to her instead.